The classroom erupted in laughter, a cruel, biting sound that sliced through the air like a blade. Ms. Elena Carter stood frozen at the chalkboard, her hands trembling as she clutched the piece of chalk. The sharp rip of fabric echoed in her ears, louder than the jeers of the students. Her favorite blouse, pale blue, the one her mother had gifted her for her first teaching job, was now torn at the shoulder, the jagged tear exposing her vulnerability to a room full of teenagers who smelled weakness like sharks scenting blood. She turned, her heart pounding, to face the culprits, 3 boys in the back row, their smirks as sharp as the act itself. But what they didn't know, what no one in that small-town high school knew, was that Elena Carter was no ordinary teacher. Beneath her quiet demeanor and neatly pinned hair lay a strength forged in years of discipline, pain, and resilience. A strength that would leave those boys sprawled on the floor and change the course of her life forever. Elena had arrived at Willow Creek High School only a week ago, a 28-year-old rookie teacher with a passion for literature and a dream of inspiring young minds. She'd grown up in a nearby town, in a modest house filled with books and her mother's unwavering belief in her. Teaching was her calling, a way to give back, to show kids that words could open worlds. But Willow Creek was no idyllic haven. The school was a crumbling relic of budget cuts, its halls ruled by cliques and a handful of troublemakers who thrived on chaos. Elena had heard the whispers about the trio, Jake, Corey, and Matt, 3 seniors who'd made a sport of tormenting teachers and students alike. She'd been warned to watch them, but she believed in second chances, in reaching the unreachable. That belief was her first mistake. Her first day had been a quiet disaster. The students slouched in their seats, eyes glazed, as she tried to spark a discussion about To Kill a Mockingbird. Jake, the ringleader, had tossed a paper plane at her head, snickering when it hit. Corey had mimicked her soft voice, twisting her words into mockery. Matt had simply stared, his cold gaze unnerving her more than the others' antics. Elena had smiled through it, her mother's voice echoing in her mind. Kindness disarms cruelty, Elena. Be patient. But patience was hard to hold on to when every day brought new taunts. Gum on her chair, snide comments about her clothes, whispers about her being too soft for Willow Creek. By the end of her first week, Elena felt the weight of failure pressing down. She'd spent her evenings grading papers in her tiny apartment, questioning whether she was cut out for this. Her mother, now frail and living in a care facility, had been her only cheerleader. During their weekly calls, Elena would downplay the struggles, not wanting to worry her. "You're stronger than you know," her mother would say, her voice thin but fierce. Elena wanted to believe her, but the classroom was a battlefield, and she felt like she was losing. The shirt incident happened on a humid Friday morning, the kind of day where the air felt heavy with impending trouble. Elena had worn her blue blouse, a small act of defiance against the growing dread in her chest. She was halfway through a lesson on symbolism when she heard the snicker behind her. Turning, she saw Jake leaning forward, a pair of scissors glinting in his hand. Before she could react, he'd reached out, quick as a snake, and snipped the sleeve of her blouse. The fabric tore with a sickening sound, and the class exploded into laughter. Corey and Matt joined in, chanting, "Newbie's gonna cry," as Elena stood there, her face burning, the chalk crumbling in her fist. For a moment, she was 12 again, back in her own high school, cornered by girls who mocked her thrift store clothes and quiet nature. She'd been small then, easy to push around, until her mother enrolled her in a local judo dojo. There, under the stern but kind eye of Sensei Hiroshi, Elena had learned to channel her fear into strength. Judo wasn't just about throws and holds. It was about balance, about turning an opponent's force against them. She'd earned her black belt by 18, not because she wanted to fight, but because she wanted to stand tall. Now, a decade later, that training surged back, a quiet fire in her veins. "Enough," she said, her voice low but steady. The room quieted, sensing something shift. Jake, emboldened by the crowd, stood up, towering over her. "What you gonna do, Miss Carter?" cried the principal. He stepped closer, his smirk daring her to react. Elena's heart raced, but her body remembered the dojo, the countless hours of practice. She took a breath, centering herself. When Jake reached out to grab her torn sleeve, she moved, swift, precise, instinctive. Her hand caught his wrist, Her foot swept his leg, and in a fluid motion, she executed a perfect Osotogari throw. Jake hit the floor with a thud, his breath whooshing out, his eyes wide with shock. The class fell silent. Corey and Matt froze, their bravado evaporating. Elena stood over Jake, her torn blouse flapping, her voice calm but unyielding. "Get up, and don't ever touch me, or anyone, again." Jake scrambled to his feet, his face red, but he didn't dare meet her eyes. The bell rang, and the students filed out, whispering, their laughter replaced by something like awe. Elena stood alone, her hands shaking now, the adrenaline fading. She'd crossed a line, and she knew it. Teachers didn't throw students, no matter the provocation. She waited for the fallout, her stomach churning. By Monday, the incident was the talk of Willow Creek High. The principal, Mr. Grayson, called her into his office. He was a tired man, worn down by years of managing a school on the brink. "Elena, what were you thinking?" he asked, his voice more weary than angry. "You can't lay hands on a student, no matter what they did." She explained, Jake's taunts, the scissors, the torn blouse, but it sounded weak, even to her. Grayson sighed. "Parents are calling for your job. Jake's dad is on the school board. I have to suspend you, pending an investigation." Elena left his office feeling hollow. She defended herself, but at what cost? She drove to the care facility to see her mother, needing her wisdom. Her mother listened, her frail hands gripping Elena's. "You stood up for yourself," she said. "That's not weakness. But now you have to fight a different way. Show them who you are." Elena nodded, tears stinging her eyes. She spent the suspension week reflecting, replaying the moment she'd thrown Jake. She didn't regret stopping him, but she regretted the anger that had fueled it. Judo was about control, not vengeance. She had to do better. The investigation was swift but brutal. Jake's father, a loud man with a lawyer in tow, demanded her termination. Other parents, though, spoke up for her. Students' parents who'd heard their kids talk about Ms. Carter's kindness, her patience. Surprisingly, a few students came forward too, including Sarah, a quiet girl from Elena's class who'd seen everything. Sarah told the board how Jake and his friends had terrorized the school for years, how Elena had been the first teacher to stand up to them. The board, swayed by the outpouring, gave Elena a choice: a formal reprimand and mandatory counseling, or resignation. She chose to stay. Returning to Willow Creek was harder than she'd expected. The students watched her warily, some with respect, others with resentment. Jake, Corey, and Matt were suspended for a week, but they were back, their smirks subdued but not gone. Elena knew she had to rebuild trust, not just with them, but with everyone. She started small, incorporating lessons about empathy into her classes, using literature to spark discussions about bullying and resilience. She shared stories of her own struggles as a teen, letting the students see her as human, not just a teacher. One day, she found a note on her desk from Sarah. "Thank you for showing me I can be strong." It was a small victory, but it fueled her. She reached out to Jake, Corey, and Matt, offering them a chance to talk, to understand why they lashed out. Jake resisted at first, but Corey opened up about his home life, his dad's temper, his own fear of being seen as weak. Matt, quieter, admitted he followed Jake because it was easier than standing alone. Elena listened, not excusing their actions, but seeing the pain beneath them. She suggested they join the after-school judo club she'd started, a way to channel their energy. To her surprise, Corey and Matt showed up. The judo club became a turning point. It wasn't just about throws, it was about discipline, respect, and community. Elena taught the students, bullies and victims alike, to face their fears, to stand up without tearing others down. Jake never joined, but he stopped targeting her, his defiance softening into indifference. By the end of the year, Elena's classroom was a different place. The students argued passionately about books, laughed without cruelty, and trusted her enough to share their own stories. Elena never forgot the shirt incident, but she wore the memory differently now, not as a wound, but as a reminder of her strength. She visited her mother often, sharing stories of her students' progress. Her mother, weaker now, smiled and said, "You're teaching them to be kind, Elena. That's the real victory." When her mother passed that spring, Elena grieved deeply but carried her words forward. As the school year ended, Elena stood before her class, her blue blouse long since repaired, and spoke about courage. Not just the kind that